Hello and welcome to WNHH Radio's Dateline New Haven. I'm your host, Paul Bass, inviting you to look behind the scenes on the stories that make New Haven tick. Well, Tony Hart makes New Haven tick on this sunny day and every day, no matter what the weather. She's here in the WNHH studio for her weekly Mayor Monday checkup on what she and we are up to in the Elm City. Good morning, Mayor Harp. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm well. It's nice to see you.
Good seeing you
and
too,
the
Paul.
crew. And if you have a question for the mayor, feel free to pop it to us via Facebook Live. Here's what you do. You go to the New Haven Independent Facebook page, and you'll see the video right there to pop it on. Thanks to Gateway Community College and Birch and Moses PC for providing financial support for today's program. We're going to excuse you a little early today, Mayor Hart.
Thank you.
You got a note from your hospital president. There's a big announcement today that you're going to be joining at the St. Raphael campus of Yale New Haven Hospital. And according to Yale New Haven Hospital, they put out a release that they're announcing a big new building and a center they're going to build for neurosciences. And it's going to, apparently, your administration has estimated it will bring in $8 million in building fees over 3 years. And they're saying hundreds of jobs. And I will admit to you that I did not know what neurosciences are. I figured there's something to do with your nerves. So I looked it up, and I guess this has to do with especially a lot with your brain. Epilepsy, Alzheimer's, strokes, Parkinson's, things like that.
Oh, it's really so important that they're doing that great work, especially as people get older. These are the kinds of diseases that impact so many of our loved ones.
Right, so I think where they're building at Sherman and George, that's where they had a cancer center at St. Ray's, and Yale already has a cancer hospital. So
Right.
I guess this is a way to have, since they took over St. Ray's when St. Ray's was in danger of going out of business, I guess this is a way to have one campus maybe specialize in neurosciences while another specializes in cancer. Is that how you say?
Yeah, I think that they've been breaking down the various specialties depending upon which campus does what. And so I believe that that's their strategy. And so I think that's why we're going to have a focus here on neuroscience.
And how do you feel about this announcement? How big a deal is this for New Haven?
It's a big deal.
Coming. Yeah, everyone's coming today for this.
It's really a big deal. And if you think about it, one of the things that is important about it is that we have a center that addresses those issues that have really been difficult to address by the medical establishment for many years. And it also is great for the medical school and those scientists that are doing cutting edge work in those areas. And so what that will do is elevate New Haven's standing as being a center that can address those really very difficult, tend to be diseases that people have over 40, let's say. And because oddly enough, even Alzheimer's, sometimes people get it early.
Someone you and I like very much, brother, died in the 60s, early 60s. It definitely happens earlier on some people.
It does. And so it gives us an opportunity to use the science that's being developed at the medical school to help the people in our region, if not our country, address these very debilitating illnesses.
And what about, so for New Haven, it's going to help us with building fees. It's going to help us with jobs.
It's going to help us with building fees. It's going to help us with jobs, but also, and it will be a place where people are treated, but there will also be labs that are doing work. And my understanding is that for every single lab that we have in the city, it pushes out about $1 million of economic relationships that are not focused just in the lab.
And what does that mean? Like the people who get jobs, stuff they buy?
The whole
economic
supply
impact, you talk
chain.
about it.
The economic supply chain is about $1 million.
And of course, people are always going to say anything the nonprofit does hurts because they don't pay taxes. This is upgrading a property to what more than it is right now, right? And it also, will it affect what we get reimbursed by the state, calculating how, like as we get more nonprofit-owned property, will there be a recalculation for payments in lieu of taxes based on that?
Our hope is that, and certainly, a lot of it depends upon state revenues. So to say that we should get more because we have more not-for-profits, but it's dependent upon how big that pot is.
And how about within the pot relative to other communities? If we're getting built up more, do they every 5 years, 10 years, revisit how much each town gets? Because I know you brought this up in the past, that it's based on old formulas, based on how much property we used to have. And every time we like watch TV or something, it's gone up another 2%, how much our
Sure. And I think that
nonprofit base is percentage.
so, and you hate to say it depends. It should go up based upon them activating the current and existing formula. But a lot of times, what the legislature will do is just put the dollar amount that was there the previous year and then say that everyone gets what they got last year. And that happens often when our revenues are down
But of course,
statewide.
even separate from taxes, we're not going to get less tax than if that property had stayed what it was. But we will get hundreds of more jobs, millions of dollars of economic impact,
Right.
and people will get treated for diseases.
No, I think that.
I mean, that's something to that, right?
I mean,
we
so-
count that still, even though we talk about taxes. all
yeah,
the time.
exactly right. I think that the fact that it does good and that it serves the public ought to be the thing that we think about first.
We're still allowed to talk about that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Especially since the land is already tax exempt, so that we're really not losing anything.
And they're building a parking garage too, they said, right?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. And now there's some people think you should never have garages because then people who drive cars might continue to drive cars. But
Well, but they're saying that this new population has decided they're sort of sworn off cars. So, it's just the old folks like us that
who are gonna need to go to this place?
right. And
Well,
we're
I'll
going to
check
have
it
to
out
go
before
in the
you do.
first place, right?
Yeah, but
So
I'll
that-
check it out before you do for about 10 years. I'll let you know how it works. And we're letting you know how it works on Mayor Monday on WNHH, your home for community radio. 103.5 FM live streamed at newhavenindependent.org. So, I don't know. I've heard the music's pretty good in Madison, Wisconsin. And I hear that, they have some fun stuff to do, but they got nothing on us.
They got nothing on us. As a matter of fact, we took them out.
We took them out. Madison thought they were hipper. They were smarter. With climate change, they're going to have better weather, maybe. No way. According to Bloomberg, we now are the #1 destination for millennials where they want to live, which
Yeah.
really blew our mind. Now, they call it New Haven, Milford, but I'm guessing it's more New Haven than Milford.
Yeah, I think it's that SMSA, so it's this
Standard
it's,
Metropolitan Statistical Area,
right,
something like
yeah,
that. Okay.
right, yep. And so it is New Haven, West Haven, Milford. There might be a couple of others. Maybe Branford is in there.
So are you surprised by this, that we beat out Madison and we're the #1 place percentage-wise that millennials want to go?
No, I'm not surprised. You know why? Because Madison isn't close to anything else. And by that, I mean, Madison is kind of in the middle of Wisconsin, which is not connected to anything. We are connected to some of the largest metropolitan areas in the country. We're connected to New York. We're connected to Boston. And
We don't cost as much as they do.
and we don't cost as much as they do. And so people can actually, and this surprised me, this was years and years ago when the trade towers went down, how many people park their cars in New Haven and go to New York. And it was kind of freaky in a way, I mean, a technical term, when there were so many cars that were not picked up after that happened.
Did people from New Haven die in the World Trade
I
Tower?
think there might have been some, and they couldn't get back for whatever reason.
That's right.
yes.
That was an eerie day. It was like one of
It
those Escape
was.
from New York movies or something.
Yeah, right.
And we were all know people we knew in New York wondering when we were going to hear from them.
Yes,
when they were okay.
exactly. And so a lot of people in New Haven work in New York. As a matter of fact, my daughter-in-law works in New York,
Oh, okay.
and her mother works in New York.
Oh, wow.
Pansy, so there. And these are just people that are in my family, so I see it all the time.
So the millennials are coming here, and partly it's a fun city. There's plenty to do.
No, mostly it's a fun city.
Yeah.
Lots of culture.
I mean, you think that's what it is?
And I think our rents are cheap. I was talking to someone over the weekend and who lives in Brooklyn that used to be an affordable community.
Oh, God, Brooklyn, forget
and
it.
she was saying that a 1-bedroom apartment is now going between $4,000 and $5,000 a month.
Wow.
And you can buy a nice house for that in New Haven.
It's 4 times what I pay, 5 times for a mortgage.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, nice house. Yeah. Wow.
And someone said it yesterday at the Cherry Blossom Festival that he lives in West Haven now, but he basically said you have everything almost that you could have in New York in New Haven. It is such a cool city. That's what he was telling me.
Yeah, it is.
You know,
And it's kind of interesting. So that's the reason, because they always had this mystery. There's always this mystery. Why are all these apartments getting built? Market rate. Who's going to live there? Remember my original theory was
Mhm.
that it was avatars. And then the owners told us, in fact, there were like the 3 Yale grad schools where people have money, and then people who have couples. One works in New York, and then we have our
Mhm.
tech companies that have started, and Yale grew, the hospital grew, and so these are real people, and I guess they're real millennials, because I also know seniors too. It's a good empty nest community for people
No, a
regionally.
lot of people are selling their homes in the suburbs and moving into town because there's something to do.
And Mr. Kamari Cooper says, "Good morning, good morning, sir. I did remember you a little better this week. Thanks for listening to Dateline New Haven." You just mentioned the Cherry Blossom Festival. That's in Worcester Square every year. Yesterday, Saturday, Sunday got a double whammy. So
Yeah.
every year they're trying to figure out when to schedule it, because we have a few weeks where these beautiful blossoms come out on the trees in Worcester Square. It's like almost like snow-covered neighborhood. And they always try to plan the festival for the day they're going to be in bloom. And this year they did it a little too late because the bloom blossoms were gone, and it rained.
Yeah, so those that were left got rained on and sort of fell off the trees.
But Marquisha Ricks
Yeah.
has a story and pictures this morning proving it was still a fun event.
It was
People were
still,
dancing. They had it was a great community gathering.
and it was, even though it was cold and it was damp, people were out there.
Worcester Square is quite the neighborhood. I mean, it's traditionally the Italian neighborhood, American neighborhood, so it has all that culture, but it's
Mhm.
branched off into a very diverse neighborhood. And you walk right downtown, and some of that housing there still is not expensive. I know when young people come to work here or other places I know of, they often look there first where we're to rent, where you still can get a pretty decent rent and walk downtown.
Well, Mr. Murphy, who I believe is the chair this year, he basically showed me if you sort of go around that whole square of Worcester Square and look at the housing, that you can see almost every um, housing type by years around that square.
You got those
From
townhouses.
You got the townhouses, you've got those old mansions,
Hmm.
you have the really modern school that is over
Yep.
there.
Modern
And
meaning 60s.
60s, modern
But it
looking.
was called modern.
It was
That
called
was
modern back
that was
back
the
in the
name of
day.
the style in the
Right.
60s. Yeah, yeah.
And honestly, I guess there isn't anything that has been built most recently there, although will be built pretty soon, right off of Worcester
Right.
Square.
And the ship captain's houses on Court Street, which
Yeah.
was beautiful, and they blocked that off in the 60s, and it's such
Hmm.
a wonderful mini neighborhood in there.
No, it's beautiful, and that's the thing about New Haven that is also great. Look, I know that people are upset, but I went to China. I saw what I really consider to be future shock, and because I was expecting it's the oldest culture in the world, and you could see very little of that. Very little of it's all gone. These big
Mhm.
skyscraper buildings that people live in, 50 to 60 stories high, all right next to each other, like little army folks. Remember when people would stand in the line, like in the 1700s and shoot? That's what those basically.
Uh,
That's what those apartments look like. Whereas here, you can really get a sense of time and the way things were and the way things are going to be. And it really makes our city very special.
Although sky is going to fall in Worcester Square. It's all over.
Oh, why? What happened?
Well, remember we talked about Mr. Wang? He had the coffee shop, and it has some
Oh,
ugly
no.
addition to it, and he wanted to have big enough windows so when it go out of business, and the historical preservation people
Right.
said,
Mm-hmm.
but there's a little part of the block that we wanted frozen in time. It should look like that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he prevailed. So there's going to be a corner where we're going to see the future. You're actually going to have a coffee shop where you can see in the windows.
Oh, well, that's pretty good. And it shows that if you work with people, if you continue to make your case, people will hear you.
But I did
right?
get you for a minute there. You thought the sky was really falling.
I was like, what? Then I said, oh, no, we're talking about a coffee shop again.
So Cam Cooper asks, with the Yale New Haven health systems growing so rapidly and expanding its access, do you believe people will receive fair care in Yale New Haven health system, which will have a monopoly in New Haven County?
It has a monopoly.
So what's the
probably
question there?
in
Is that-
Fairfield County,
Yeah.
too.
So I guess the question is about the consolidation in the healthcare industry. And here the monopoly partly came because we were not going to have a hospital anymore at the Yale New Haven at the St. Ray's campus. They couldn't
Right.
support it
They
anymore.
couldn't support it anymore. It was going out of business. So it wasn't like it was done to just get
Right.
bigger. It
So
was
naturally,
actually,
there's been consolidation everywhere in the
oh,
healthcare industry. Small hospitals
absolutely.
gone out of business in the state. It's basically Hartford Hospital against Yale New Haven.
Hmm.
So what? And obviously, that has upsides and downsides. It's the weather. It's the internet. Things change. I think it's a good question. Do you think? What do you think that monopoly is going to mean for the average person?
Well, one of the things that we've got to think about in terms of Yale is that it is a teaching hospital and that it also has a huge free care program that a lot of places don't have. As a matter of fact, Bridgeport Hospital is associated with Yale. And one of the things I was talking to, both my daughters are OBGYNs, and one works in Connecticut and the other one works in Georgia. And the fact that we have such a strong free care program in Connecticut, something um, as simple as something that isn't paid for either by Medicaid or by insurance, you can get done at our
What would be
hospitals.
an example?
Like what do they call it when you're pregnant and you're sort of looking at the baby, the picture of the baby,
Ultrasounds.
ultrasound. So that's an example of something that is done through free
So
care
is your
here.
response that you're not concerned because you feel like as a teaching hospital, it has, and with all the free care, it has certain benefits?
I think that it has benefits in that people, when they need care, can get care. Now, where you worry about it is, and it's really a mixture between the hospitals and the insurance industry, because for a long time, the insurance industry had um, basically was stronger and could demand the type of care that was given and who basically got what based upon your health insurance. And I think with hospitals being stronger, that the medical side can have an ability to also weigh in around care and quality. And so I believe that there's a balance and a mixture, and it's going to be over time, you're going to see the insurance industry having more power and the providers having less. And then as they gain power, it's going to be
That's one of the
balanced.
ways that that gets a little subtler to the more the nuance of healthcare, where there are big industries that don't always have the same interest. So insurance companies and hospitals are against each other.
Right.
And I think what you're saying here is you feel that as hospitals get stronger, they can negotiate better rates with insurers.
They can. And yeah, and with all the insurers,
And then
including
the danger for us is
government.
sometimes they can also demand higher prices from the patient. I mean, it sort of
They can
works
demand,
both
and
ways.
they can also demand the system of care and define it
Hmm.
so that, and they can also have their insurance companies can have their medical directors and their medical system decide what's important for you to get. And so hospitals tend to be on the other side of that. And so I think that there has to be balanced ultimately.
Hmm. Just by chance, was Marshall Holly your OBGYN?
No. Mm-mm.
Because he delivered both my kids
Oh, he did. He did.
with his nurse midwife.
Okay. I
He
went
was
to
a legend. Yeah.
He was a legend and a wonderful member of this community. No, I was an early CHCP
I
person.
remember that.
Yeah, so I went
Back when
to
we liked managed care companies.
yes, so I went to sort of the managed care system, and it worked.
Yeah, that was it. Had its heyday.
It did.
And you're listening to the heyday of Mayor Monday. Mayor Tony Arps here with you on WNHH 103.5 FM live streamed at newhavenfin.org. We got a great Aaron Good question here, as always. Thank you, Aaron, for listening. Does Mayor Harp think there should be a federal investigation into possible money laundering, mortgage fraud, and other financial crimes involving the former English Station power plant, where numerous shady deals appear to have taken place? Dash, as Chris Peak recently reported on in the New Haven Independent. There's a lot in that sentence.
There's a whole lot in
Let's
it.
parse this. So what's your opinion on what Chris found out, that there were these series of deals where it looked like different people were buying the property, but they're all kind of connected, and they all have this history of getting caught for scams, and nothing ever happened with the property. The deals went bust, but like condos were bought. And any thoughts into all that?
No, I do think some authority should look into it.
And any thoughts in specific? I mean, what's going to happen now?
I don't know. We had wanted to actually, during the time, the city had wanted to be involved in all of that. And the state would not allow us to be involved because we thought at the time that if we were involved and we would have, there would have been a local presence.
Yeah.
Um,
And Chris talked to some former officials like Karen Gilberg and Rob Smuts who talked about that.
yeah.
It's so weird. So, like, this new guy who bought it won't tell you anything. It turns out he's in the same business with the guy who sold it to him. And they both got caught doing these scams, like two-sided toothbrushes that they supposedly invented, that they stole money from in a penny stock scam.
Well, and we can really blame Pura for that because we tried to have standing and they wouldn't give it to us. And so I think it should first start with Pura and getting them and the state to take a look at what they enabled because they didn't have to do it that way.
By allowing certain sales to go through, you mean?
By allowing certain sales to go through and by allowing them to still be involved, even though they had not paid their taxes here and they had not really done the work that they had said that they were going to do early on with cleaning up that facility. And this was early on. And, they basically went in there and they robbed it of all of anything that was valuable and got rid of it. That was the first group. And the state would not give us standing.
Wow. I have to admit that it's hard for me. I have to really concentrate to understand what was wrong about those deals because they are dirty deals, but they're complicated. Sort of like when we had all that real estate flipping years ago that led to people going to jail. It took a lot of work to understand how those things work.
No, it did. And, they're, I don't know, I guess they're looking for work. So, like maybe they should go ahead and do it. Either both, really, federal and state.
And I'm
because Pura is a part of this too in terms of their decision making.
And I'm just wondering what can go there since the cleanup. And, you did the work in getting the cleanup. You got George Jepson, the former attorney general, to strike when the moment was hot, which was when they were selling UI, which used to own the property, to Iberdrola, if I said that right, the Spanish energy giant. And they had agreed to a $30 million dollar cleanup. So it is getting cleaned up now. And it's not going to be cleaned up to a standard where you can have residential living. Right. But you will be able to have commercial development. I apologize to any readers who were confused about that in the comments of the story. We tried to make that clear. So what can we put there? Can it be valuable land?
Well, I think that we think it can be residential, but there are all other kinds of building types that could go there. It certainly could be commercial to some extent. The other thing that we've got to think about is the water around there and how polluted it is and who's responsible for cleaning all of that up. I think that has got to be done before it really becomes an attractive site.
Yeah. All right. But here's hoping we get there because we are doing so many interesting things in town right now. So maybe one day we'll get to English Station too. I wanted to talk to you, Mayor Harp, about the big story in town this past week, which has been the fallout of something we talked about last week, which was the shooting of an unarmed couple in a car in New Hallville by a Hamden police officer who crossed into our city and a Yale police officer. And we talked about that last week and about your concerns. And I think in part thanks to some of the work I heard you did behind the scenes, the public found out a lot more about this case last week.
Right.
Video was released, which hadn't been done by the state before, body camera video, and all the recordings of the 911. And what was most interesting to me was what was not in those recordings. I'll get to that in a minute. I think there are more questions than there were before. I mean, what was your take when you watched the video and you heard all that?
Well, I think that there is, and it's really hard to. I don't think the video gave as much information as people thought that it would. So.
Well, it's because they didn't show us everything because part of it's still the investigation, what happened after.
Right.
After watching that, after hearing the 911, what's your working theory? I know you don't know, none of us knows, but there's so many rumors on the street about what happened because it's weird. The one thing that is weird when you look at that video, here's this guy shooting, and the first bullets go at the man coming out of the car. He appears to have his hands up, so we know that's a mistake.
Right.
Traditionally, in those kind of cases, police officers are not prosecuted because they just say, I think he had a gun, I was wrong, but I reasonably believed it, so they get retrained or something, but not in trouble. But the weird thing about that video, the part that gave us all spooked out feelings, was he walks to the other side and starts firing point blank into the passenger side window. And that's, my understanding is, based not just on conjecture, that will be the focus of any criminal probe.
probably will. I honestly don't know what. I mean, the whole thing. I don't know what went through his mind. I really don't, because I think all of it was so inappropriate.
Yeah, I mean, the initial limited statement was he thought the guy had a gun. That would explain the first 3 shots.
But what about the
The
girl
rest,
in the
yeah.
car? Yeah.
And then the other weird parts were, I'm not going to repeat some of the rumors on the street. You've heard them too, because I don't like to
Mhm.
do that without having a basis. But I will
Right.
just point out a few other things that were released. There were no radio communications from the officers before they stopped and approached the car. So this bolo, be on lookout
Mm-hmm.
for the car, was issued. And usually when cops then stop a car they found, they radio in.
Right.
Okay, I found the car. Here's the car. The car's at Dixville and Argyle. I'm now getting out of the car. There was not a single transmission on police radio, either from the Yale officer or from the New Haven officer, about stopping the car, finding the car, approaching the car. All it was be on the lookout. And the next thing we heard was shots fired.
Well, I think the fact that I don't know why that happened. When you look at almost all of the procedure that was not really done by these officers, I mean, there must have been at least 7 or 8 things that they were supposed to have done that they didn't do. And so you just wonder what you wondered, how could they have forgotten about all of these procedures, all of these orders that they typically are supposed to enact when approaching a vehicle like
including
that.
not turning on their body cameras.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But, for me, I always have the anti-conspiracy theory. So I even though sometimes I'm wrong, because there are conspiracies sometimes, I often believe that screwing up is the most likely explanation for when things go wrong in government.
Mm.
So rather than somebody having some nefarious motive. So when I see a case like this, my first thought always is, man, the guy screwed up. He just got the wrong idea. It was 4:30 in the morning, had a report the person was armed, even though it wasn't true. He just freaked out and started shooting. And once the bullets fly, I mean, the Yale cop had bullets flying at him. Obviously, cops usually shoot back on that. And I still am not convinced the Yale cop did anything necessarily, except not radioing and stuff or putting on his body camera.
And, like not turning his car off before he
Yeah.
goes out of
Yeah, and then his car.
he did a bunch of stuff that
So
was
obviously,
kinda
I think the
strange.
reason there are all these wild rumors and why one of them might turn out to be true, though I can't guess what, is the crossing to the passenger side, is the not letting both ending up there but not letting anyone know they're there, not putting on the cameras. I mean, that stuff is adding up to a lot of crazy wondering.
Well, I know there's a lot of wondering and noticing that people are doing that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense. And could it be just one big, people were tired late at night, one big screw up? Absolutely could be, but it's looking very suspicious.
Yeah. And as one person explained to me, in those kind of situations, crazy theories come out and they do end up being crazy, but you got to take them seriously, because when there's so many unanswered questions, they come from somewhere. They could be true, or they could have become those theories because there was some other information that ended up being true. So
Yeah, I think that it's going to require a lot more investigation and talking to people. So
And on the subject of talking to people, the Yale police, the New Haven police, even though New Haven police were not involved in this incident, and the Hamden police have said they want to build trust with neighborhoods, go to community meetings. And the Hamden police said they're going to start going to community management teams. So we went to the first New Hallville community management team. They weren't there.
Oh, they weren't. Did they know when it was? They did say that they would go. They weren't coming to our Monday morning intel meetings either, and they said that they would attend those. I haven't checked to see whether or not they've come.
But the head of the Yale police and the head of the New Haven police and their top brass have been showing up a lot. So they were both in New Hallville. They were both in East Rock last week. And then on Saturday, the top cops, New Haven and Yale departments, are really working this thing together. They were walking New Hallville. Alan Appel went with them. There's a story in the Independent.
Mm-hmm.
And they got some raw stuff. They were dealing with people feeling unprotected, not trusting the police, saying, why are you out here if, we can't trust you? I thought it was a good first step. I mean, I think they really went out and encountered it and didn't run from it.
No, I think that's good. And I really applaud our police chief for working with the Yale police chief. And, a lot of people have asked me why Yale police have guns. I've basically said that they are technically New Haven police officers. They're approved by our police commission, that sort of thing. And the real question, and that our chief has said that they have been helpful. In this particular case, it could have been, as you said, just a major malfunction. And so, but that doesn't mean that you totally destroy the system. You improve it and you find ways to make things work better.
We're always looking for opportunity in misfortune.
Yes.
Like San Diego, outside San Diego,
Oh
another
my
synagogue
goodness.
shooting during services on Saturday. Wow.
I know. It's just, I think that when honestly the president unleashed this uh, sort of white
National.
nationalism, it just opened Pandora's box in our country. There are a lot of things that people probably felt and kept to themselves that he enabled people to act upon. And so, like this crazy attachment to guns and then these crazy ideas about who ought to be in America. When a crazy person has a gun, these ideas, and it's supported by our national leadership, it creates mayhem. And basically that's what we've seen around this country.
Yeah, the local angle, since everything has a local angle, is that our synagogues, like all the ones in the country and other houses of worship, are talking about security,
Oh yeah.
and it's a big debate. How many doors do you close? At my synagogue now, we have people who just stand out letting people in on the Sabbath, which is something very new, and some people feel don't overreact. That numerically, it's still unlikely that someone like that's going to come in. Other people say, but we're already seeing copycats. This was 6 months after Pittsburgh. This was using the same manifesto used in New Zealand. So those are tough questions. How much you give up as a community by having tighter security, how much you need it. The one in San Diego, they'd spend a lot of money preparing for something.
So I do think we've got to be cognizant. The other thing that, we haven't really talked about is mental illness and how we haven't really grappled with that very well in our country. And I think as long as you have guns, people that have these strange ideas about humanity that sort of rule people out and think that certain people are not worthwhile, and you have a mental health delivery system that is inadequate, and you have leadership that spurs these people on, you've got to be careful.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Cam Cooper has another question. A little over a month ago, there were guns found under the floorboard in the old clock factory on Hamilton Street. Do we have any updates on where the guns came from and if there are any other concerns with other abandoned and neglected buildings? Thank you, Cam, for the question.
I don't have anything. I'll try to look into something for next week on that. But I'm sure that, remember, things have gotten a little less hectic in our town, but for many years we had gang violence, and gangs were all over our community, and I'm not surprised that they hid guns in vacant buildings. And
I
so,
have a different theory on those guns.
oh, what's your theory?
I think we're talking organized crime on that one. But
Oh, okay. Well, there you go.
remember what the building was used for and who was using it. But that's
Oh,
just a
that's
theory.
okay.
I didn't make it up, but I don't know anything.
Well,
Some happier things happened this weekend. In addition to the cherry blossom, was there a Chapel Haven 47th anniversary?
there was. It was really nice, and they recognized people who'd been in that community for 30 years.
That one's growing.
It's growing.
You've been there quite a bit with the new buildings right on their campus for people, adults with developmental disabilities, as well as a store they have now in Westville Village. Yeah.
You are, yeah, very nice.
Very nice stuff.
And it's one of the happiest organizations, some of the most honest and beautiful human beings who are there, who are served, but they also serve our community. They work, like throughout Westville. I know you see them working in our stores, and they and they're some of the most honest and kind people.
Some of them are regulars, members there at our synagogue,
Yeah.
including daily services. They help us make the minyan.
And honestly, the Chapel Haven does a lot for our Westville neighborhood. We're
It
really
does.
grateful that they're there.
It's a great anchor there. You also, Rock to Rock is an amazing event. I kind of put it in the same category as Open Studios,
Hmm.
a big event that gets over 1,000 people who just love New Haven. Some of those millennials who come in here instead of Wisconsin, right? But not just millennials, but that's where I think the organizing energy comes.
Hmm.
So there were over 1,200 people riding bikes, some long rides, some medium, between the two rocks, big festivals, and raised over $227,000
That's
for green
impressive.
causes.
That's impressive.
That is impressive. And I remember when that started happening years ago, your predecessor said to me, he looked at that, he looked at Open Studios, he said, there's something happening in New Haven with civic culture.
Hmm.
People are into being here, they're into doing good stuff, and a lot of people are turning out.
And people love to be together. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that's the other thing about New Haven.
And, Great Thing Rock, the Rocket's very diverse. I mean, it's just all sorts of people come out that play different roles in that one.
No, absolutely.
And that's nice. And in Schubert, there was a Talent Haven event where the Alders organized it to raise money for arts programs for kids. Do you know how that was?
It was great, and I didn't get to go, but I got to see the something that the Board of Alders, they also perform,
Yes.
and it's so
who was
much
good?
fun. Oh, like the Taisha was great.
What did she do? Taisha Walker, what did she do?
And she was there were a group of them, and they danced. Oh, they were really good. So it's a lot of fun.
And then at City Hall Friday night, you had a bereavement network, 6th year that this group came together. Yale New Haven's involved in this one, and a lot of community people. And these are families who've lost someone to gun violence.
That's right.
And Nakia Dawson does a lot of the organizing work, and they had a lot more people inducted. Their group has grown, and I guess that was a nice event too. You had at City Hall.
No, great event.
Busy
every year.
weekend.
Yep.
Thursday night, you had the vote in the Stop and Shop approval. I looked at the terms. There's no question this was a victory for the strike, but I think the company won some stuff too. Like they won back time and a half for Sunday, but you have to work there longer to get that. You are going to be paying more for your health insurance. You're basically still going to get the health insurance. It's not going to cost you more than your raise, the way they originally said. But it seemed like it was a negotiation.
No, I think that's the system. And so I'm really pleased that we do have that system, that workers have a place at the table, but so do the owners.
Then Wednesday we got Protect Our Care, which is health reform groups like Universal Health Care Foundation Connecticut getting people up to the Capitol May 1st to push for bills to have new public options so that thousands of people can get less expensive health care, and also prescription drugs prices expand, who gets to buy into that state program, so your prescription drug price can be lower. So that's what they got on the table for that.
That's great.
Tonight you got a Small Business Resource Center event. Tell me about that.
Sure. We the Small Business Development Office in our Economic Development Department, run by Kathy Graves and Jerry Garcia, they have classes, and they're usually 30 to 35 people who want to start a business, and they learn how to do a business plan. They learn about banking. They learn about, and they sort of work with each other to see whether or not their ideas catch fire. And so over the weeks, they also work with banks, with the state, and other organizations that support these businesses. And so they get to know them on a one-on-one basis during those classes, and they're going to graduate.
All right. Those are fun. Markeisha explains to be there because I love to see what the businesses are that people are cooking up.
And some of them are cooking businesses.
Oh, yeah. Okay. There you go. There you go. You had a change at City Hall. I read that Byron Kennedy, your health director, left for a state job.
Well, he is leaving in June.
And who's going to replace him?
We're going to advertise the position. I think we'll probably look in-house at least for an interim, and haven't made that decision yet. But ultimately, we hope to replace him.
All right. And so one issue we've always talked about was lead paint policy. So under Mr. Kennedy, and is this going to continue, have we gone to the federal level, the lower state level, higher level for how much lead triggers an inspection, like 20 micrograms per deciliter rather than the 5?
I think that we are looking, we do an ultimate letter at 5, as I understand it. And we don't do an investigation until the next time the child is tested. And so if the amount of lead has grown beyond the 5, then we do an investigation.
Gotcha. Okay. And anything else? I got to let you go because you got the big announcement. So it's a sunny day and a day of growth in New Haven. Yale New Haven Hospital doing neurosciences for people over 40 for the most part, and the kind of brain-related diseases that are going to get more research done in New Haven, more care done, and more people working on them.
Exactly so. And we'll be at the focus of that kind of growth and opportunity in our town. And so we're extraordinarily grateful for this.
Oh, and also, let me get one more question here. Stephen Levine, because I've never seen Stephen before around here. So much talk nationally about infrastructure. What about the failure of our population density? I'm having trouble reading this. Rebuilt model. Rebuilding repeatedly infrastructure that will need to be rebuilt is not sustainable. We need new ideas in population density planning, smaller carbon footprints, sincere and definitive effort to remove the value of real estate as an obstacle to housing.
I don't understand that question.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Stephen. We'll take a good look at that. I'm not sure if we're talking about trying to make dense housing, which is our idea with new urbanism, or with the climate change. I'm sorry, because we know that density does have a smaller carbon footprint. Like I was reading this weekend that San Francisco contributes the least per capita to polluting the atmosphere than any other city because it's so dense.
And so actually our suburbs contribute the most.
Yeah, because people drive everywhere. So Stephen Levine would love to explain. Stephen, you're on. So next week, because we're running out of time now, Stephen Levine, you are invited next week, along with everybody else, to Mayor Monday. And we're going to take up your question and give it the thought when we can understand it. How's that?
Sounds great to me.
All right. Well, it sounded great to me to catch up with you today, Mayor Harp, on Mayor Monday. Thanks for checking in. Thanks to Gateway Community College and Birch and Moses PC for providing financial support. Thanks to Harry Droz, the magician, the man who makes everything run here without all sorts of fancy big screens and equipment, but keeps up with the Joneses. We're going to take it out with the Afro-Semitic Experience performing I Wish I Knew How It'd Feel to Be Free from the group CD, A Plea for Peace. This is Paul Bass inviting you to fly free with us all day and all night long here at WNHH, New Haven's home for community radio.